Hello and welcome to Designer Market Update. Today is Friday, January 3rd, 2025. It's the end of the first trading week in the year 2025. Of course, it's been a bit of a weird week because 2024 started us off this week and now we're ending in 2025. Next week, I'm really looking forward to seeing what these stocks in the Bitcoin mining ecosystem are going to do based on the fact that, let's pull up the first slide, please. We've got the price of Bitcoin, again, really close to $100,000 a coin. To me, it's not so much about reaching 100,000 and just staying there. I think it's really imperative that we see the price of Bitcoin surpass 100,000, stay above 100,000, and then surge ahead substantially higher. That's the only way that we're going to see hash prices, which I'll get to in a moment, really start to move forward in a substantial way. The network hash rate is about 120 at last check. That's pretty high. So naturally with hash prices thereby being at about, $57, it creates an environment that's not entirely conducive, right, from an economic perspective for Bitcoin mining companies to make as much money as possible. Now, as it relates to Bitcoin mining stocks themselves, today was a tremendous trading day. Talk about performance, like Bit Digital, up nearly 18-19%. We had Riot in the second position there, closing it at almost 18 or so percent. And then finally Cypher in third spot, 15 or so percent. These are phenomenal returns. And in fact, the entire publicly traded Bitcoin mining trading ecosystem just did really, really well. The dilemma, of course, if you're a keen observer of this market, as I am, is that a lot of these stocks are just kind of, not all of them, but a lot of them are kind of like just making up lost ground. I mean, you look at Bitfarms, they're trading at about $1.72, give or take a little bit. We've been substantially higher, right? The stock price has been dramatically higher. In fact, for most of these companies, the stock prices have been dramatically higher. We're just kind of catching up. So then the question becomes, okay, what is it going to take for these companies to really sustainably start to really move forward? Because after all, it is somewhat true that the stock market is a leading indicator. And so what is the market telling us by the fact that these stocks are now playing catch up? Is Bitcoin the leading indicator at this point? Because you would think, or at least I'd like to believe, that if the market believed Bitcoin was going to go like dramatically higher, $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 a coin. I mean, I've heard a lot of people talk about $1 million a coin this year. I'm somewhat sober-minded as it relates to these predictions, but let's just, for the sake of conversation, assume that, the market believes Bitcoin is going to $500,000. Okay, well, why are Bitcoin mining stocks trading where they're trading? I think there's two explanations. The first has to do with the network hash rate. The network hash rate continues to grow. So, yes, these stocks do trade in sympathy with the price of Bitcoin, but the underlying economics of what makes these companies either, generate some useful revenue that's profitable or not stems from hash price. And at $57, hash prices are not really great. Let's phrase it that way. So I think that that's somewhat of a damper. It has a dampening effect, I think, on these stocks. So unless we really see hash prices start to balloon, or we see Bitcoin really start to, take off again, I don't know that we're going to necessarily see a lot of forward price movement. It's great that we're catching up, right, in many cases and making up lost ground. But I don't think any of us are in this game to just kind of make up lost ground, right? We want to see a company like Bitfarms be at $3, $4, $5, $6 a share. At least I'd like to. The other factor is that a lot of these companies within the publicly traded Bitcoin mining ecosystem have a tendency to dilute their shares. And, in many cases, it's accretive. You dilute, you buy more equipment, you expand your facilities. And hey, the sum of the parts are more valuable than each individual part, right? So to speak. I'd like to believe that that's going to be true for Bitfarms, right? I'd like to believe it's going to be true for many other companies in the ecosystem. But at the end of the day, another thing that I think is going to really help, and I've said this before, I'll say it again because I'm hopeful that I'll be able to push this message into the marketplace and maybe someone will hear it. I do think we need to consolidate the entire industry. Riot already owns about 20% of Bitfarms. Bitfarms is in the process of acquiring Stronghold Digital Mining. Hey, would it really be that bad of a thing if Riot, which I know many of you don't like, but would it really be that bad of a thing if they acquired Bitfarms, in so doing acquired Stronghold, and then turned around and maybe acquired 2 or 3 other companies? And what if you saw Mara and maybe even CleanSpark consolidate other portions of the industry? And before you know it, you have 2 to 3 companies that are hyperscaled Bitcoin mining operations, right? I think that might create a differentiated investment thesis that then Wall Street can take a look at and say, hey, we like what we're seeing here because you're not only betting on the price of Bitcoin and on hash prices, but you've got some really interesting operating companies here as well, with plays on potential AI as well as energy infrastructure. It's just a thought. Okay, my friend, we're going to go ahead and wrap up this broadcast with a quote that I think is really, really interesting. I always like reading these quotes. I really do think it's kind of cool. The only person you are destined to become is the person you decide to be. And that's a quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson. And I'm sharing that not to sound cheesy or weird, but sometimes I think we all need a little bit of inspiration. So my friend, let's stay positive, let's be great, and we will see each other again next week, if not potentially over the weekend. See you then.